Hi everyone, I just wanted to check in, say hello from quarantine lockdown, which we're all experiencing. Um, yeah, I'm just on here right now just to touch on a few things that I've been getting a few questions about recently. I think a lot of people have just been very, you know, surprised with the current realities of everything that's going on, and I think that's one thing for sure that you can be confident in is that no one is a full expert in what's going on. So no one can tell you exactly what's going to happen because it's never happened before. Um, and you have at your disposal the ability to influence what happens out of this. Um, and I think one of the great things with change is because it puts so many of us on the same footing as those who we perceive to be ahead in the game. But the game has changed. The rules have totally changed, and so now is the opportunity for you to really make the game work for you and create your space in the game and determine what you want and go for it because you're responsible to create from this what it is that you want in a few years. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen with the previous models that you have developed. Um, it will require adaptation in areas that might seem uncomfortable at first. But I think one of the thing when you are in a place of discomfort is the opportunity to grow. It's the opportunity to take on something that's new. It can be exciting, it can be fearful, but it really depends on how you look at it. The saying goes, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that's a very powerful saying. And one of the first things when you decide where you want to go, I would think of is you want to start by developing a model. One of the first things I learned in statistics was that all models are wrong, but all models are useful. More recently in the world of business, the theory goes that a plan is useless, but planning is priceless. And if it's one thing I can say to you right now is start a plan. Start a plan, don't get too attached to it, but just start a plan. And that plan will help you to foresee, at least preemptively, prepare steps necessary to overcome potential obstacles in your way. And that will lead you to a level of growth that you yourself might not realize you have the potential to right now. It starts with that first step. In this series, really, in this decade, or one of my life mission in general, is really to showcase a platform and create a platform which exemplifies the fact that anyone can get to a level of success and get to that level of success not simply based on the predefined roles of how you achieve success, but you can actually get to a level of success while still enduring true to your integrity and being true to who you are. And I remember growing up and, through the music, through pop culture, through a lot of the influences, it tends to showcase this image as if in order for you to get successful, you have to do all the things you do not want to do, in a sense, which is you have to do all the things that are wrong. Back in the day, it was like getting in illicit trades. It was just doing all the things that you wake up in the morning, you just like, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to spend your day doing that? And so my mission as a child or growing up was just to showcase, like, there's more to it than that. There's more to life than that. Like, you can achieve a life of success and looking back at your legacy and being proud of it, not looking back at your legacy being, wow, that's what I had to do, like, no. Like, you can, right now, if you have a piece of pen or a pencil and a piece of paper around you, like, that is enough to start your journey. That is enough to get you to a place beyond where you are right now, especially if you see yourself beyond where you are. Because one of the most interesting things, and this is one of the things, it doesn't matter which one of the books that try to sell you and the fastest way to succeed and all these different things, the most important ingredient in succeeding, I believe, is you first have to start with the desire to want to succeed. Like, you have to have that within you. No one can give you that. So if you read 1,000,000 books and you wonder, why are you still in that same position? And it's because you have to have that desire. First of all, if you read that many books, you probably have that desire. The thing I'm going to touch on today might be one of the reasons why that desire is not fulfilling, and that is pretty much due to the models that we were given. A lot of us grew up in pre-colonial countries. We have a disposition that, well, we grew up with a disposition which we ourselves have to overcome, and in many cases we don't even realize that we are being held back by that narrative, by that model, by that perception, by that way how we look at things. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm going to tell you a scenario, or lay out a scenario in which I think how we were somewhat influenced to look at things, and why I think we have to like change the way we look at things to order to get beyond where we are, to get where we're needing to go. And I like to call that scenario the water bottle company. And before I even touch on that, one of the things I want you to think about for a second here, if you look at countries who seem to have very minimal amount of contact, like trade, let's say several countries in like the African motherland, and then you have like the Caribbean diaspora, or even the black Americans here in the States, or black American communities here in the States, you see something that's pretty similar, and it makes you wonder, how did that framework really form in such diverse geographical locations? And one of that major framework, one of the tenets of that framework is the concept of competition, and the concept of scarcity. That concept of scarcity says that if one person gets to a certain level, that takes away from the ability of someone else in the system to get to that level. And so we kind of subconsciously spend our times trying to be the one who get to that level and stop everybody else from getting to that level, because we think once you get to that level, that's it. The level is now completed, like there's no more space for anyone else. And ironically, that is actually the reason why a lot of our communities have not advanced. Is because the world doesn't flourish on competition. Now, I'm not saying not to be strategically competitive in a sense, which means finding something that you're doing and finding a better way of doing it. But the competition that we generally think about is a competition where we are trying to beat someone else at it. And so we're always focused on someone else. And so we're over here like fighting for this small pie or the crumbs falling off a table, when really and truly the table is filled and ready for a feast. But we just don't understand that to get on that table, there has to be collaboration. For example, a business system cannot function just by a product. A business system has to be supported by a supply chain, and it has to be supported by distribution. So even if you have the greatest product, if you don't have a supply chain for the raw materials to produce a value-added product and get it to market through a distribution system, your product can die right there, even though it's the greatest thing ever. And so through bridging all those different pieces is what makes you a valuable asset in the market, or a valuable producer in the market, and that is exactly where you want to get at in the market, is to be a producer. Like, it's great to consume, and we're all consumers, but you also want to be a producer in the market, and in order to produce, you need to collaborate. And here's a scenario that I'm going to lay out, which kind of shows you kind of like the framework that we were given through a lot of our colonial past, which is a vast reason why it's so similar across different geographical boundaries. And then I'm going to lay out to you a scenario which I believe help to solve that problem and help us to go beyond and live in the life of abundance, and really get to the point where we're succeeding at what we do. That scenario starts like this. So let's imagine for a second that you're in a community. This community is a low-income community. There's not much opportunities presented around you. We don't have a lot of system built up around in this community, so you don't have the ability to just like get out there and go find a job in this community, because the systems aren't in place to facilitate that. And so somehow you come up with a perception, or someone comes up with the idea to produce bottled water. So they're going to bottle water. Like, there's a well in this community. Let's say there's a well. There's some kind of water source. This water tastes good, and you're gonna bottle this water. To bottle the water, you need the water, which you have. You need bottles, which you can produce, and you need, quarks, stuff like that, and you need people to produce it, let's say. So you develop this system where all of a sudden you're producing bottled water, and you realize there's a market out there for your bottled water, so you're selling your bottled water. The X-Nex community over here is pretty much in the same circumstance, where it's also a community, it's a low-income community, not a lot of skill, not a lot of opportunities, so they look across from their communities and they see that you're producing bottled water and you're getting to market. You have developed a system to get bottled water to market. Now, based on our framework of how we think, our model of how the world works, and which is competition, what ends up happening is that all of a sudden we start to think, the people in the next community begin thinking that you have to compete with that person over there that's producing the bottled water, because that's the only thing you can produce is bottled water. So what happens? They start producing bottled water, and the bottled water market that you're accessing is not unlimited. So it's a limited amount of people who actually purchase this bottled water. So what happens is that community over there start creeping into your market, and all of a sudden you realize they're cutting into your profits. They're cutting into your market. So you're not making as much as you would make if they weren't producing. So what ends up happening is that you eventually become defensive about that market that have access to, and it's been taken away by this next community over there. So it's in your best interest, in a sense, especially based on her framework and how colonialism has kind of taught us to behave. It's in your best interest to go over there and to create some kind of riot and stopping them from producing bottled water, because they're taking away your market. And so they become defensive because they're also living in this mindset of scarcity, thinking like bottled water is the only thing they can produce, and that's how they're living. So now, in essence, you're telling them that they don't have the right to survive, and they're looking at you as the enemy because now you're trying to stop their survival route. What generally ends up happening is that both community becomes divisive, and both communities start usually from very basic ground. Conflict escalates into something that's a lot more serious, and then from that point on, it generally involves some kind of like violence. People start dying. Then what happens is that one person hurts one person from this community, that this community responds, and that community comes back and respond, and then the cycle continues, leading down a path of just constant violence. Now, imagine this scenario differently. You are this, let's say this is community number one. This is community where the bottled water business started. and you realize like this community over here is producing bottled water, and you're like, there's not much going on in your community. And so, but you realize like you have the potential to produce the bottles at a better price than that community over there is getting to produce their bottles. So you come up with this idea and you walk over to that community and say, hey, I realize that you're producing bottled water, and you're purchasing your bottles to bottle the water at 7 cents per bottle. What if I tell you that I can produce those same quality bottles for you at 5 cents per bottle? And all I need from you is the ability to show you that I have the ability to produce, or all I want from you is the opportunity to show you that I have the ability to produce those bottles at 5 cents. Now, at 2 cents less, I can produce those bottles for that person. And so now I go and I start producing these bottles for that person at 5 cents. That person already has access to the market. So I am bringing a value proposition, and take heed of that word, a value proposition. I am bringing a value proposition to this person where I'm not going to stop their business. I am going to enhance their business by allowing them to become more profitable, by giving them or producing for them the materials they need for their production at a cheaper price, right? So you're helping them to become a more efficient producers of water, of bottled water. That right there is collaboration. The previous concept I just gave you was competition. Now, it's pretty obvious that in the first case, no one wins because it's a cycle of violence. It's a cycle of fighting for a small pie. It's a cycle of just thinking like your options are limited. Whereas in the second option, you're now working together. And so it's very unlikely that community one will want to attack community two, because guess why? Community two has become a supply chain for community one, which means if community one attacks community two, they are actually cutting off their supply chain, which stops them from being able to produce bottled water. You see, I mean, I can get more in depth in that explanation, but that's the model. The collaboration model is the model that we need to emulate. That's the model that we need to find a way how to incorporate that into every single thing we do. Because when we do that, we grow the pie. You see, the concept is you don't want to be fighting for a slice of the pie. You want to be enhancing the pie. You want to be increasing the size of the pie and making that pie works for everyone. So increasing the size of the pie, there's more pie there for everyone, and then sharing that pie. Because when you share that pie, it means you're now in a system which functions. You're now in a system that allows you to better enhance yourself. And that's the hidden piece. Now, I can get into historical reasons as to why colonialism did not want that to be a thing. But I am telling you, you're now in a different era. And for you to get to the point of success where you're thinking, that is the level of creativity that's going to be required on your part. That is the level of thinking that's going to be required on your part to move forward. So just think about that. I'll be uploading more and more of these videos in this series. This series is creating 100 millionaires by 2030, creating 100 black millionaires by 2030, and we're going to do that. I know 2030 is a decade, and you're looking at it like that's a long way ahead, but believe you me, once you're occupying your time with things that are moving you forward, you won't even be counting the days down. You will be so happy taking the steps towards your level of success and helping others and providing value and solving market problems that you'll wake up being happy that it's Monday, knowing that you're going out there to find someone to add value to. And so thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again. Subscribe. Please, any questions you have, reach out.